Hi, I'm CJ and this is my RC channel. It wants me to put the rudder on and then the tail wheel, but I'm going to anchor the tail wheel now because it's independent of the rudder. That way I don't have to flip the plane upside back up again. Let's see. You know what? Maybe I will do that now because there's a bolt that goes through there. Okay. So what's going on here is there's going to be a bolt that screws in here and anchors the rudder in place once it has been dropped into position. So let me get a 2.3 by 10. See, that bolt is going to be underneath of the steerable tail wheel bracket, it looks like. Let me swing this around a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and set these wing halves down for the moment so they don't get knocked off. Okay. Okay, as you can see, I hope. Yeah, okay. There is 2 holes here where the tail wheel bracket bolts down to, okay? But there's a recessed hole here right after them, and that's where the rudder anchors. So if you put this in before the rudder, you can't get to the screw to anchor the rudder in place. And if you don't anchor the rudder in place, it's gonna fall off on you. Now we can go ahead and do this upside down because it doesn't matter. Okay, let me just show you how this works here. We got 1 pin that this pin here is going to drop into. We have another clasp pin that is going to snap in to these 2 pieces here, and then our final piece just comes up against there and gets anchored with the screw from above. So that's our 3rd pivot point. So first I'm going to start by getting this rudder to start plugging in here. Easier if the fuselage didn't try running off on me. Okay, that's easy enough. You just got to give it a little push. The foam is flexible enough. And then snap in the rudder. And then we're going to drop in this pin, this screw here. Now I have screwed it in until it is snug, and now I'm going to back it off just a little bit at a time. There we go. Just like 1/8 of a turn gives you nice, smooth, easy motion. So everything is locked in place. Good. Okay, now I can take 2 more of those screws. Let me just get the directions over here. Okay, 2.3s by 10. I need 2 more. And the tail wheel. And that is just a really nice tail wheel assembly. I mean, you gotta love it. For the price of this plane to get all this nice hardware. This is a self-tapper, so you want to make sure that you're starting it straight up and down. so it continues to screw in that way. And that's a nice solid mount. It feels like the plastic goes all the way through the length of the screw. In other words, it doesn't feel like the plastic is like 1 millimeter thick and you're passing a screw through there. It feels like you're tight all the way down to the point where it stops. And so in other words, the tail wheel shouldn't be tearing off of here unless it takes a whole lot of foam with it. Okay, that is done. And now we attach our springs. It's a good thing I went and got the needle nose. I probably want them for this. So what we're doing is we have our rudder here, and we have these two plastic horns here, and we have this double horn here, and we're going to attach a spring to each one. And that way, the rudder will actuate the tail wheel, but it does it with the ability to flex. So if the tail wheel catches and kicks to the side, it's not going to yank the rudder and break something. So, good design. It's not an original thing, but it's nice that they gave us that. Oops. There we go. That's one. Definitely use a needle nose on this. Otherwise you might overbend spring metal and not have a good connection, or not have any connection if it damage it too much. There we go. So the rudder turns the tail wheel. There we go. Nice and easy. And if again, if one of them kicks, the other one isn't going to get damaged or torn apart. So onto the stabilizer. Now this is where we need one of our rods here. The smallest of the spars. Just going to go ahead and pull them all out now. So I'm going to need them all soon. So here we have a carbon spar, and as you can see, there's a carbon tube that runs at least to here. So there's a lot of structural strength there. Let me just plug that in on one side. That's interesting. We don't want it to go all the way in. Let me try the other side, see if there's a stop in one of them. Okay, that one seems to have a stop point, but it's more than halfway. Let's see. Okay, this is going to slide in to there. May not be a way to do this that way. Okay, I may want to glue this in one of the two tubes because there's can't see any other way to really get this to work like that, to get it to go halfway and half and half. Of course, this side goes in easier, so that'll work. Okay, so our stabilizer, the movable part of the stabilizer fits together, and you've got the overlapping tabs there. So you want to push those in until you can see the screws holes like that, and let me see if I can get this for you where you can see it. There's a hole in the stabilizer here. There's going to be a screw that's going to go in there that's going to anchor the two sides together to make sure they don't move around. So let's identify the screw size. Okay, 2.3 by 6 for those two, and 2.3 by 6 for the movable stab connector. And those are these small self-tapping screws. As you can see, they gave us 4, even though we only need 3. That seems to be a recurring theme, at least one spare screw in each size. You drop them. These screws are very small. If you can avoid disassembling this, I would do that. If you have a car big enough that you don't need to take the tail section apart, you are probably better off not having to do that. Because eventually they're going to wear out. Because the surfaces are thin where the plastic goes through, and the screws are very small. Okay. So now it's time for connecting rods. I'm going to go ahead and leave this section to the point where I am, no, I'll go ahead and put them on now. Doesn't matter. I'm also going to put on these struts. I'm waiting on the receiver that I'm going to use for this. Stuff up in the meantime, at least guessing at center, and then fine tune later. So they say that one is left and one is right. Yep. You've got an L on the plastic tab on the left side one. The other one is not marked. The one that you want for the left has an L on it. So let's see what hardware goes with those. Okay, that's the 2.3 by 6. And there are no more 2.3 by 6s. So, but there's a bag of 2.3 by 10s, and there's 4 of them. So I'm going to assume those are the screws for there. Between the carbon fiber tubes in the stab here that go all the way almost to the ends, and these struts, and then the inner tube that joins them together, this rear surface is really solid. I'm not going to have to worry about that under high forces when flying and doing acrobatic stuff. It's not going anywhere. I'm glad that they used 10s for these. The 6s were really small, and these 10s go in a lot further. It makes it just beefier, I think. Okay, solid. That is odd. Okay, here's where I got a little issue, and I also don't see hardware for that either. I'm gonna have to poke around through the box and see if it's in somewhere I haven't looked already. Those are just the little plastic crow's feet for the wing turbulators or whatever they're called. Okay, here's my issue. Wait, no, the balls are on there. Okay, I just couldn't see it because it was underneath here. So the rear tail section, we use these 2 rods where it's got a carbon or plastic rod in the center, ball joint at one end, and a just straight rod at the other. Those are going to go through here like so, and there's a grub screw in there. I need to loosen that up and find that Allen wrench. I have a feeling that's the correct size. I hope that is Loctite it on. I'll figure that out later. Okay, here's my thought here. This brass fitting here, there's a screw on the back, not like a snap clamp or something, and the assembly is a little loose, which it needs to be to have play so this thing can rotate. At the same time, I cannot see what's on the back side here, so I don't know if there's any Loctite. So when the receiver comes in, I'm going to do this build in 2 sections. I'm going to do the physical assembly, and the electronics I will do in a separate video. So when I get to that point, I will unscrew these horns and check the back of this and make sure it is Loctited in place. And if not, I'll get some Loctite on it and let it dry and set that up. There we go. So now I can snap this in place. And what I need is across the room. Usually a good way to get these ball clamps on is to just squeeze it on with a pair of pliers. There we go. Now I'll just line up the rudder, eyeball it, and tighten this grub screw down, and that will be good enough for the first round of the assembly. Okay. So now this is a very nice linkage system. Having those ball cups and these nice brass fittings here. There we go. Makes for a linkage with very little slack, or if any at all. So it will give precise control and feedback. Okay, stabilizer is anchored. Okay, now it's time to move on to the linkages on the wings. So for the moment, I'm going to move the fuselage off the table. Let's do our wings. Okay. And all 4 of them appear to be the same length. So 2 over here and 2 over here, and then we have this type of connector here, which is going to capture this L hook like that. Just put this over the end here and snap it on once it's over the horn. adjustments as to which hole. I want maximum motion out of these flaps because I want to be able to get the full 90. So I'm going to put it at the top hole on the horn there. Go. Got the ball link on. Altogether a nice easy assembly. We'll fine tune everything a little later down the road. So now it's time to put the wings on. To see the full size of this plane. There's also metal inserts for the wing bolts, which is very nice. They have tubes inside here. This tube runs inside another tube, not just into foam. Got to get that wing connector to snap in. Just check something. So that has a stop there, and this has a stop there. Good. So we don't have an issue like with the stab where you're trying to figure out where center is. Plug in these wing struts. 2 bags. And inside each of these bags there's a couple of screws, so be careful as you open them that you don't get away from you. Okay, with mine, the 2 screws were in one of the 2 bags. These struts kind of have a V formation, which is why they're not completely assembled out of the pack. So, as you can see, there is an extra screw needed. This plugs in like so. As I said, there's 2 screws. One for this one and one for the other. Don't over tighten that. You don't want to strip it, because then it will never be tight again. Okay, so if you, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see this, but there are 2 plastic blocks molded into the wing or glued into the wing here and here, and that's where we have the pins, just like the 2 pins up here. They're like RC car body pins, if you will. So this is for the right side. That says left on it, doesn't it? No, it's not left. It's just some flash or something. They're nice rod struts. They're aluminum tubing with plastic features at either end. So I'm going to start by connecting them at the fuselage. Go. This will definitely be easier. This. gave us extras for just about everything except for the pins, which is no big deal. There we go. Now they put a regular bolt on here, but they also provide an aluminum spinner. I'm going to go ahead and put on the smaller prop intended for the 6S. I do have a pair of high performance props coming, so I may swap this out for that down the road here. Probably should go on the balancer. Okay, that's good enough for now. So there we go. That big plane. There's some house cleaning. We got these little suckers that go on the wing, and that's going to require some foam safe glue, which I have, and there's some little gray and black plastic rings and or adapter pieces. I'm not 100% sure what those are for. I'm going to just peruse the directions for a second and see if I can't identify that. Show you this picture here. See, that's the NFPV camera and the antenna for the camera. So that's how that would plug into that hole. There's the gimbal assembly with the camera on it. And they talk about the tow line mounting point and the bomb bay, which I had mentioned earlier. As you can see, there's the foam piece that comes into play with that item. And the optional skis, which I have, but we're way past snow season here, so I'm not going to get to use them this year. Okay, let me just show you the mystery parts. We have this little plastic tree here with a few different items, and as you can see, they look like they can potentially plug into each other or stack on each other as adapters, and there's another set in silver, and I have no idea where those go to. These are the little turbulators that I've talked about, and I'm going to glue those onto the leading edge of the wing. You just got to go upstairs and grab some glue, and but you don't need to watch me glue bunch of little plastic things on. And these are extra rubber bands for the landing gear, and I will probably tighten up the way I've got them wound right now. I just did that to be quick and get things together. But if any of you have one of these planes or know someone who has built one and you know what these two plastic trees are for, please let me know. I'd love to include that information. I have not put the wing bolts on here, I know. I'm going to do that right now. I just went ahead and did the struts first. And these are the wing bolts. lots of extras of these. It's the kind of thing you'll lose at the field. You drop it in some grass and it's gone. You know, a good thing to have with you is a magnet. A while back, I bought a few of these flashlights. They were a long, thin flashlight, LEDs, like there's like 3 or cluster of LEDs at the front, and it's got a magnet at the ring, and it telescopes, and the end is flexible. I bought it, a couple of those so I could give them away as gifts to my dad and a buddy of mine who's a car mechanic, and I kept a couple for myself, and I'm gonna put one in my flight box because that seems like the kind of thing that would be great to help find dropped hardware. And here's another thing. If any of you have ever treed an airplane, you know what a nightmare it is to try to get them down. Here's how I did it the last time, and it worked great. I actually did it when I was younger, and recently I had a plane, did a treetop landing. I'm sorry, I'm trying to flex this and talk and not do something stupid at the same time, and I'm doing something stupid. So, in any event, I really need to put those rubber bands on. Landing gear just wants to drop right down. The way I got the plane out of the tree, for those of you who are familiar with a wrist rocket, which is a slingshot, and I took a wrist rocket. I basically just went to Walmart because we couldn't get the plane out of the tree any other way. It was about 45 or 50 feet up, and I grabbed a $5 wrist rocket, a length of line, and I found a large metal bolt about inch and a quarter, and put that through the end of the line. And then it took a few tries, and you definitely got to watch your head and face on the return when you pull back on that line, but I was able to shoot that nut, towing the line behind it over the top of some of the branches that were that the plane was stuck on, and pull on them, and I broke a few branches off that way. And then I got to the point where there was it had gotten stuck up in the tree, so buy a few extra bolts, and I just pulled and pulled until it finally gave way and brought down the airplane. Yeah, it could have damaged the plane, but at the same time, that's better than not getting the plane back. So, up to you. So there, wings bolted. So now I'm going to do these bands in a different way. And what I'm going to do is, I'm going to go ahead and stop the video. You don't need to see me rolling up rubber bands. Anyway, the plane is built. There's not anything left to do except gluing these little turbulators on, and I will cover everything else in the next video, where I put in the receiver, tune the electronics, and then we'll have some test flying. Hopefully the field opens in a week or two. Well, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned some stuff about the Avios Grand Tundra Plus, and I think if you decide to invest in one, that you'll really like it. It's hard to resist an airplane that's this big. Please click like if you haven't already, and please subscribe. I'd really appreciate that. To all my regular subscribers, thank you very much.